The blood-red sunset cast long shadows across Timberline's dusty Main Street as Bonnie Clarke clutched her basket of herbs tighter to her chest, desperately wishing she'd finished her errands before dusk. It was 1878, and the small Colorado mining town was flourishing with silver money and lawlessness in equal measure. At 22, Bonnie had learned to keep to herself, especially after moving west following her parents' deaths, leaving behind everything familiar in Boston except her knowledge of healing plants and her stubborn determination to forge her own path. There she goes again, the witch woman. The harsh voice cut through the evening air, stopping Bonnie in her tracks. She recognized the speaker as Mrs. Holloway, the general store owner's wife, who never missed an opportunity to spread poison about anyone different. "I heard she was out dancing naked in the moonlight again." Another voice chimed in, followed by raucous laughter from the group gathered on the mercantile's porch. Bonnie kept walking, eyes fixed straight ahead. 3 months she'd been in Timberline, setting up a small apothecary at the edge of town, and the whispers had only grown louder. Her remedies worked, that wasn't in dispute, but in this superstitious mining community, a young woman living alone with unusual knowledge drew suspicion like flies to honey. "Witch, devil's whore," someone called out, no longer bothering to keep their voice down. Bonnie quickened her pace, but the market square still stretched before her. She'd have to cross the entire open area before reaching the safety of the side street leading to her cabin. "Maybe we should see if she floats like they did in Salem," a man's voice suggested, slurring with whiskey courage. Footsteps followed, and Bonnie's heart hammered in her chest. This wasn't just talk anymore. "Give us a spell, witch girl." A hand suddenly grabbed her arm, spinning her around. Her basket tumbled to the ground, precious dried flowers and roots scattering in the dirt. She found herself surrounded by 5 men, their faces twisted with cruel amusement. "I'm a healer, nothing more," Bonnie said firmly, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Please let me pass." "A healer? Is that what you call it when you gave the Jenkins boy that tea right before he took sick with fever?" The man gripping her arm tightened his hold painfully. "I gave him willow bark for his toothache," Bonnie protested. "His fever came days later." A sharp slap cut off her words, sending her stumbling backward. The sting of it shocked her more than the pain. "My Eliza lost her baby after you sold her that mixture," a red-faced man accused, stepping forward. "That was to ease her morning sickness, not to liar." "Witch!" The crowd was growing now, drawn by the commotion. Someone threw a rotten apple that struck her shoulder, leaving a brownish stain on her blue calico dress. Bonnie felt tears threatening but refused to let them fall. Showing weakness now would only embolden them. The first shove came from behind, sending her to her knees. As she tried to rise, rough hands pushed her down again. Panicking now, Bonnie looked around for any friendly face, any help at all, but found only hatred and suspicion staring back. "We don't want your kind here. Go back to wherever you came from, or better yet, let's give her a proper witch's welcome." The circle tightened around her, and for the first time, Bonnie felt true fear clench her heart. These weren't just words anymore. The mob's energy had shifted into something dangerous and unpredictable. That's when the thundering of hooves split the tense air. The crowd parted instinctively as a chestnut stallion reared up dramatically, forcing people to stumble backward. Atop the magnificent beast sat a man Bonnie had noticed around town but never spoken to, tall and broad-shouldered, with a face weathered by sun and wind beneath the shadow of a black Stetson. "What in blazes is going on here?" His voice carried the easy authority of someone unaccustomed to being questioned. "Teaching this witch woman a lesson, Ramsey," one of the men called up. "Ain't none of your concern." The rider's eyes found Bonnie's, and something passed between them, recognition of a sort, though they were strangers. Without dismounting, he maneuvered his horse closer to her, leaning down with an outstretched hand. "Looks to me like you're about 20 brave men harassing one woman." "That about the size of it," no one answered. The stranger's presence had changed the dynamic, introducing uncertainty where moments before there had been only mob righteousness. "Miss," he addressed Bonnie directly, his hand still extended, "may I offer you a ride home?" Bonnie hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. With astonishing strength, he pulled her up in one smooth motion, settling her sideways in front of him on the saddle. The horse danced nervously beneath their combined weight, but steadied at a quiet word from its master. "This ain't right, Ramsey," Mrs. Holloway pushed forward. "She's brought nothing but trouble since she got here. Strange lights at her cabin at all hours, collecting dead things from the forest, dried herbs for medicines," Bonnie corrected softly. The rider Ramsey looked around at the crowd, his face unreadable beneath his hat. Then, deliberately, he drew the pistol from his hip holster, resting it casually across his thigh. "Any man here thinks he has legitimate business with this lady," he said evenly, "can come calling in the daylight alone and unarmed. Otherwise, I suggest you all find your way home. Now." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then someone in the back muttered something and turned away. Others followed, the crowd dissolving as quickly as it had formed, though dark looks were cast their way. "You'll regret this, Ramsey," one of the men called back. "She's bewitched you too," the rider chuckled and holstered his pistol. "Only thing bewitching me is how quickly brave men turn tail when faced with someone who fights back." He clicked his tongue, and the horse began walking, carrying them away from the market square. "Thank you," Bonnie said when they were out of earshot. "I'm not sure what would have happened if you hadn't come along." "Nothing good," he replied grimly. "Where to, Miss?" "Clarke, Bonnie Clarke. My place is just beyond the creek, the small cabin with the garden," he nodded. "I know it, I'm Adam Ramsey. Most folks just call me Ramsey." As they rode in silence, Bonnie became acutely aware of her position, pressed against the solid warmth of him, his arm around her waist to steady her on the horse. After months of avoiding human contact, the proximity was startling. What was all that about? Adam finally asked as they crossed the small wooden bridge spanning the creek. "People fear what they don't understand," Bonnie answered. "I make remedies from plants. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. When they don't, it's easier to blame witchcraft than to accept that medicine has limits. And when they do work," she smiled faintly. "That's witchcraft too, apparently. Can't win either way." "No," she agreed. "You can't." They reached her small cabin, nestled among pine trees with a neat herb garden stretching toward the creek. Adam dismounted first, then reached up to help her down. His hand spanned her waist, and he set her on the ground with care. For a moment they stood close until Bonnie stepped back. "I lost my basket and all my supplies," she realized, dismay washing over her. "I'll go back for them," Adam offered immediately. "Know they'll be ruined by now," she sighed, thinking of the precious herbs she'd spent weeks collecting and drying. "I'll gather more tomorrow." Adam studied her face in the fading light. "They won't leave you be, you know, not after tonight." The truth of his words settled heavily on her shoulders. "I know." He seemed about to say something more, then changed his mind. "Lock your door tonight, Miss Clarke. I'll check on you tomorrow." Bonnie watched him ride away, a curious mixture of gratitude and unease churning inside her. Adam Ramsey had saved her, but his involvement would only complicate matters. In a small town like Timberline, people would talk, and they'd already decided what kind of woman she was. True to his word, Adam appeared the following morning, looking slightly uncomfortable as he stood on her doorstep holding her repaired basket, now filled with the salvaged herbs he'd gathered from the market square. "You didn't have to do this," Bonnie said, touched by the gesture. "Least I could do," he replied with a shrug. "Found most of it, though some was trampled beyond saving." She invited him in for coffee, a simple courtesy that felt strangely significant. Her cabin was small but meticulously organized, with bundles of herbs hanging from the rafters and shelves lined with glass bottles containing tinctures and salves. "This is quite an operation," Adam commented, looking around with interest rather than suspicion. "Where did you learn all this?" "My grandmother," Bonnie explained, setting the kettle on the stove. "She was a midwife in Boston. I grew up learning which plants heal and which harm." A shadow crossed her face, though she was careful to call herself a nurse, not a healer. She knew what happened to women who drew too much attention. "Like what happened to you yesterday?" "Yes." Adam accepted the coffee she offered, his large hands dwarfing the cup. Up close, Bonnie could see he was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30, with lines around his eyes that spoke of squinting into the sun rather than age. "People in town say you're a cattle rancher," she ventured. Adam nodded. "Got a spread about 5 miles west." "Nothing fancy, but it's mine. Came out from Texas with nothing but my saddle and built it up." "That's impressive. No more impressive than a woman setting up on her own in a town like this." His eyes met hers directly. "Takes courage." Bonnie looked away, uncomfortable with his praise. "Or foolishness. Sometimes they're the same thing." He set down his cup. "Miss Clarke, I came to warn you as much as to return your things. Sheriff Dawson's no friend of mine, and he's less likely to help you now that I've stepped in." "If those folks decide to come back, I can handle myself," Bonnie interrupted, though the memory of helplessness in the market made her words ring hollow. Adam didn't contradict her. Instead, he said, "I've no doubt. But sometimes it helps to have allies. My foreman's wife, Elena, she's been looking for someone with knowledge of women's remedies. Her time's coming in about 4 months. She's expecting. 3rd child. First 2 didn't survive." His expression grew serious. "She'd appreciate your knowledge, and it might help if folks saw you had connections beyond just me." Bonnie understood what he was offering, not just protection but legitimacy. "I'd be happy to help her," she said sincerely. Adam left soon after, promising to send Elena to visit. As Bonnie watched him ride away, she realized he had never once looked at her with suspicion or fear. After months of hostility, his simple acceptance felt like a precious gift. Elena Vasquez arrived the next day, a small woman with a ready smile who spoke English with a musical Mexican accent. She showed no hesitation in consulting Bonnie about her pregnancy, and their immediate connection transcended the language barrier. By the time she left, carrying a packet of raspberry leaf tea to strengthen her womb, Bonnie had made her first true friend in Timberline. What Bonnie didn't expect was how swiftly Adam Ramsey would become a regular visitor. He began bringing small gifts, a sturdy shelf for her bottles, fresh game from his hunting, tools for her garden. Each visit lasted longer than the one before, and Bonnie found herself looking forward to his company with a yearning that both thrilled and frightened her. "You don't believe I'm a witch, do you?" she asked him directly one evening as they sat on her porch watching fireflies dance above the creek. Adam considered this seriously. "I believe you know things most folks don't. Whether that makes you a witch depends on who's doing the naming." He glanced at her. "Does it matter what I believe?" "Yes," Bonnie admitted softly. "It matters." He reached over, hesitantly covering her hand with his. "Then no, I don't think you're a witch. I think you're the bravest, most interesting woman I've ever met." Their first kiss came naturally after that, a gentle exploration that deepened with shared hunger. When they parted, breathless and stunned by the force of their connection, Bonnie knew her life had changed irrevocably. Yet for all the private joy of their growing relationship, public hostility continued to mount. Elena's friendship provided some buffer, but the rumors persisted, growing more elaborate with each telling. When the blacksmith's son recovered from pneumonia after Bonnie's treatment, some credited her skill, but others whispered of satanic bargains. The situation came to a head on a stormy afternoon in late summer. Bonnie was gathering mushrooms in the forest when Elena found her, panic etched on her face. "Bonnie, come quickly. They are searching your cabin, Sheriff Dawson and others. They say you poisoned the Parker child." "What?" "Little Mary Parker." Bonnie dropped her basket in shock. "I gave her mother chamomile for colic 3 days ago. The child is very sick. They are saying—" Elena hesitated. "They are saying you cursed her because her father was one of the men in the market that day." Bonnie raced back to her cabin to find it surrounded by townspeople. Sheriff Dawson was directing men to carry out her possessions: books, herbs, bottles of remedies, and pile them in the yard. When he saw her approaching, his hand moved to rest on his gun. "Miss Clarke, you're wanted for questioning about your involvement in the poisoning of Mary Parker." "I didn't poison anyone," Bonnie protested, watching in horror as a man emptied her carefully labeled remedies onto the ground. "Those are medicines, not poisons." "We'll let a proper doctor determine that," Dawson replied coldly. "Until then, you're to come with me to the jail." The crowd murmured approval. Bonnie scanned their faces, recognizing patients she had treated, neighbors who had once smiled at her. Now they looked at her with hatred and fear. "This is madness," she said, her voice breaking. "Mary has a fever, probably the same one that's been going around the mining camp. Chamomile tea couldn't cause that." "Save it for the judge," Dawson said, reaching for her arm. "He'll be here on the circuit in 2 weeks. Until then, you'll be our guest." "She'll be no one's guest." Adam's voice cut through the commotion as he pushed through the crowd, Elena's husband Miguel at his side. "What evidence do you have, Dawson?" The sheriff straightened, clearly displeased by Adam's arrival. "The child took sick after drinking this woman's potion. That's evidence enough." "Half the town's children have the fever," Adam countered. "Will you arrest their mothers too? This is different." "Yes," Adam agreed coldly. "It is different. It's a witch hunt, plain and simple." The crowd stirred uneasily. Someone shouted, "She's bewitched Ramsey too. Look at him defending her." Adam ignored them, addressing Dawson directly. "You want to take her in? Fine, but you do it legally. She gets a fair hearing with witnesses speaking for her as well as against. That's for the judge to decide." "And until then," Adam challenged, "you'll keep her in that flea-infested cell while a mob decides her fate. We both know how that ends." Dawson's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting, Ramsey?" "I'm suggesting," Adam said deliberately, "that Miss Clarke will remain in my custody until the circuit judge arrives. I'll guarantee her appearance." "Your custody?" Dawson sneered. "And where might that be? Your ranch, I suppose. Convenient arrangement." Heat flooded Bonnie's cheeks at the implication, but Adam didn't flinch. "She'll stay with Elena and Miguel in their cabin on my property. Elena's expecting and needs Miss Clarke's care. Any objection to that, Sheriff?" The standoff continued for several tense moments before Dawson grudgingly conceded. "You'll be responsible if she runs. And if anything happens to another child while she's in your custody, it's on your head, Ramsey." "Understood." Adam turned to Bonnie, his expression softening. "Get whatever you need. We're leaving now." Within the hour, Bonnie found herself riding away from her home, her remaining possessions in saddlebags. The destruction of her cabin for the sheriff had made no move to stop the ransacking once the official search was complete left her hollow with grief. "I'll come back," she vowed, looking over her shoulder at the little house that had represented her independence. "We'll come back," Adam corrected gently. "Together." The next 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Alina and Miguel welcomed Bonnie into their cozy cabin, and she found solace in helping with the pregnancy and the couple's daily routines. Adam visited daily, often staying late into the evening as they planned her defense. During these quiet nights, sitting close by the fire while Alina and Miguel tactfully retired early, Adam and Bonnie's relationship deepened beyond physical attraction into something profound and tender. They spoke of their pasts: Adam's difficult childhood in Texas, Bonnie's sheltered upbringing in Boston, and cautiously, their possible future together. "If I'm cleared of these ridiculous charges," Bonnie said one night, "I could rebuild my practice somewhere else. Denver, perhaps." Adam was silent for a long moment. "Is that what you want, to leave Timberline?" "I don't see how I can stay," she answered honestly. "Even if the judge dismisses the case, people will always suspect me." "Not everyone," Adam countered. "Alina and Miguel respect you. My ranch hands have seen how you care for their families. Opinions can change, can they? People need someone to blame when things go wrong. I'm an easy target." Adam took her hands in his. "What if you weren't alone? What if you had a name that carried weight in this town?" Bonnie's heart stuttered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you, Bonnie Clarke." His voice was rough with emotion. "I'm saying I want to marry you, which accusations and all." Tears sprang to her eyes. "Adam, you can't." "Think of your reputation, your business." "I've thought of nothing else for weeks," he interrupted. "My reputation will survive. My heart won't if you leave." The sincerity in his eyes left her breathless. "I love you too," she whispered. "But marriage, now, people will say I enchanted you." He laughed softly. "Let them. I know what I feel, and it's no spell except the one you cast just by being you." Their kiss sealed a promise that neither took lightly. When they finally parted, Bonnie felt hope taking root alongside her fear about the coming hearing. The circuit judge arrived exactly 2 weeks later, a corpulent, red-faced man named Harrington with shrewd eyes and a reputation for fairness. The hearing was held in the town hall, packed with curious onlookers. Bonnie sat beside Adam, drawing strength from his presence as Sheriff Dawson presented the case against her. To her surprise, Dr. Wilson from the neighboring town of Silverdale appeared as a witness, not for the prosecution as she'd feared, but in her defense. "I've examined the Parker child," he testified, "as well as samples of Miss Clarke's remedies that escaped destruction. The girl's illness is influenza, the same that's affected dozens of children in the county. The chamomile tea Miss Clarke provided is precisely what I would have recommended for colic, and could not possibly have caused the fever." The testimony of Alina and 3 other women who had benefited from Bonnie's treatments further strengthened her case. Most powerful was the unexpected appearance of Mrs. Parker herself, who stood trembling before the crowd. "Mary is better now," she said softly. "And I don't believe Miss Clarke hurt her. I was pressured to say so by—" Her eyes darted toward several prominent townsmen who suddenly found the floor fascinating. By the time Adam spoke, describing Bonnie's character and contribution to the community, Judge Harrington was already writing his decision. He cleared his throat for silence. "I find no evidence of wrongdoing on the part of Miss Clarke. The charges are dismissed." He peered over his spectacles at the assembled crowd. "Furthermore, I am deeply troubled by what appears to be a campaign of harassment against a woman whose only crime is practicing traditional healing arts without the benefit of a husband's name to shield her. Sheriff Dawson, I expect restitution to be made for the property destroyed during your overzealous investigation." Relief washed over Bonnie like a wave, leaving her light-headed. As the crowd dispersed, some pleased, others disgruntled, Adam kept his arm firmly around her shoulders. "It's over," he murmured. "You're free to go wherever you choose." Bonnie looked up at him. "And if I choose to stay," his answering smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds, "then I would suggest we speak to the preacher on our way out of town." They were married that very afternoon in a simple ceremony with Alina and Miguel as witnesses. When Adam lifted her onto his horse afterward, just as he had that fateful evening in the market, Bonnie felt the symmetry of their journey. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Ramsey?" he asked, swinging up behind her. "Which home?" she asked, leaning back against his chest. "My cabin or your ranch?" "Both, neither." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Home is wherever we build it together." As they rode out of town, heads held high despite the mixture of curious and hostile stares, Bonnie felt a strange sense of completion. The path ahead would not be easy. Prejudice died hard in small towns, but she was no longer facing it alone. In the years that followed, Bonnie and Adam created a life that defied expectations. The cabin by the creek was rebuilt and expanded, becoming both their home and a place of healing. Adam's support never wavered, even when whispers occasionally resurfaced. Alina's successful delivery of a healthy daughter, followed by another 2 years later, gradually earned Bonnie a cautious respect among the women of Timberline that eventually extended to their husbands. On the 5th anniversary of their meeting, as they sat on their porch watching their 3-year-old son chase fireflies in the twilight, Adam asked, "Do you ever regret staying?" Bonnie considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I wonder what might have happened if I'd left. Would I have found the same fulfillment elsewhere, the same love?" She reached for his hand. "But then I look at what we've built together, and I know I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. Even with the hard times, the suspicion that still follows you sometimes." "Especially with those," Bonnie answered with the wisdom she'd earned. "They remind me of what we overcame, of how you lifted me onto your horse that day and dared them all to stop us." She smiled, remembering. "I think I fell in love with you in that moment before I even knew your name." Adam pulled her close. "Then it was worth every bit of trouble that followed." As the sun set over the mountains, painting the horizon in the same blood-red hue as the day they'd met, Bonnie silently blessed the cruel words and actions that had led her to this man, this life. In a world that had once sought to name and shame her, she had found her true name: beloved, healer, wife, mother, and the courage to claim it.